Hello, I'm Juliet Morris and welcome to this first quarter edition of Performance in Perspective. Now, it may only be the first quarter, but there's no shortage of topics for discussion. The reaction of the financial markets to BP's record results at the end of last year was less than enthusiastic. So how has the company responded to this challenge in the first quarter of 2006? That's just one of the questions I'll be putting to John Brown a little later in the programme. And how have the individual segments started the year? We'll be talking to the three EVPs to find out. But first, as usual, let's get the headline figures and the reaction of the media, plus BP's Chief Financial Officer, Byron Grote. Well, here to talk about the strategy and first quarter performance is John Brown, Group Chief Executive. Welcome to you, John.
Juliet.
Another strong set of results.
Another strong set of results, not a record, but very strong.
Now, there was a time when private medicine was used by the well-off to sort out all their lumps and bumps, but not anymore. Nearly a third of all hip replacements and a fifth of all heart bypass surgery is done privately. But as the operations performed in private hospitals become more complicated, there are a number of patients who are now claiming that their lives have been put at risk. Today, APROP, a new pressure group, was launched to campaign for what they call the proper regulation of private hospitals. Wendy Robbins reports. And the government's Health Select Committee has now decided to review the regulation of private hospitals. Well, with me now is Dr. Andrew Vallance-Owen of Bupa, the biggest provider of private healthcare, who's speaking on behalf of the industry. Good evening to you. Now, while those studies that we featured obviously weren't Bupa cases, do you accept, as Professor Reynolds said in the film, that, quote, when things go wrong, you're better off in a large NHS hospital?
Well, no, I don't. But firstly, can I say that these are two very rare...
Now, with rapidly rising oil prices, unrest in northern Iraq and the recent credit crunch in the US, the world economy is facing some tough challenges. But what does it all mean for the energy sector in general? Anatole, great to have you with us. We hear G7 finance ministers currently warning of a global economic slowdown over the next 12 months. Is that your reading of the situation?
I think there's almost no doubt that there will be a slowdown. Almost every time that there seems to be a settling down in the oil market and demand and supply beginning to come into equilibrium, there's some new geopolitical shock that comes along and hits at another $10 a barrel.
It does seem incredible, though, doesn't it, that this very high price of oil isn't affecting economies to a greater extent?
Well, of course, it has contributed to the slowdown.
A very good evening to you, and welcome to the Whitbread Book Awards. The awards have been running now for 28 years and are given to those books that the judges feel demonstrate the very best of contemporary British writing. They're also designed to offer the reader the opportunity of exploring new areas of literature. And for that reason, they're divided into four main categories: Best First Novel, Biography, Poetry, and Novel. Here with me is Francine Stock, who'll be discussing the shortlisted books next door with our very own panel of judges. Our panel is here to describe and discuss that strategy as it applies to their parts of the business, and a little later they'll be taking questions from our live audience. Before that, however, and without more ado from me, it's over to Tony Hayward to introduce the main elements of the strategy. Tony.
Thank you very much, Julia.
So I have no doubt that what Tony's just said has given you lots of food for thought, and we'll come to the question and answer session in just a few minutes' time. I just want to ask you first, Tony, a couple of questions. I mean, you talk a lot at the moment about evolution, and I remember when you took over as CEO, you said the strategy was robust. If it's so robust, why have you changed it?
Well,
Matt, thank you very much indeed. More questions on vision? Yes, a gentleman at the back there.
Thank you.
So other questions? Yeah, there's a gentleman down here. I wonder if your experience is it's less complex yet, the business, and whether these guys are listening to you. It'd be quite interesting to know whether what they say is actually happening. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this evening. Many thanks to our panel and to our live audience here in London, and to all of you watching the screen version of the programme. That's how you do it.